going on, folks? Everybody out there? Can everybody hear me? We're having some technical difficulties. Got a new setup going on, so hopefully you can hear me.
Wait and see if anyone responds.
Folks, can you guys hear? If anybody can hear us, go ahead and throw something down in the comments for us, please.
Post a comment and ask, can you hear us? Oh, Teresa says she can hear us.
I don't know why that's.
Sounds low on YouTube, Willie said.
How's that? Oh, Jesus, that's really loud to me. How's that? How's that, Willie? Is that better?
Paul said no.
It's not better? You know what? I bet. Hold on one second, guys. Don't go anywhere. If I lose you, I'm just going to black out. I'm going to jump out of here real quick and then check our audio and come right back. Let's see. Good audio here. Yeah. There we go. Should be better. For some reason, it reverted to the audio coming off of my camera as opposed to the fancy microphone we got up here. Can anybody hear me a little bit better?
Oh, there we go. Much
There we
better.
go. Good. All right. We're rocking now. All right. Hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Everybody weighs about 5 to 10 pounds heavier. If you didn't, you're doing it wrong.
Got to do a lot of working out next week. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. So, folks, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I don't know how this is going to go. I haven't done one of these before. We're going to do a virtual class on optics. And, you know, one of the things I really pride myself on with any of the courses that we do, any of the classroom portion, you know, we have a good time with it, right? It's a little bit fun. It's meant to be interactive. I keep things light, throwing a little bit of comedy relief from time to time. And that's going to be hard too, obviously, with this virtual thing. So hang with me. Number one, the other thing I want to see is lots of questions coming from over here. That'll keep things where we're not PowerPoint heavy or anything like that. But first of all, I want to welcome everybody. Thanks for showing up. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Ed, good seeing you. Willie, Teresa, Benoit, C. Paul, good to see you guys. Also, for those of you watching in the very future where this is not live, welcome and thank you for showing up. We appreciate that. And then sitting through the fixing the audio just a minute ago. But hopefully we'll have enough content here to where it's worth your time. And this is a class that I normally, or a block of instruction that I normally give as one of the classes, one of the blocks of instruction that we give with our long range course. So it's really important to be able to identify what is a good optic, and obviously if you're buying optics and things like that. So it's important to know what you're getting into, and also it's good to know why, you know, your optics cost what they do. We got a bunch of new folks on here, and just so that if you've never met me, what's going on, John? Good to see you, buddy. If you never met me, just a little background on me. I did come from, you know, I spent about 11 and a half years in the military. Most of that time was in special operations. I was with 1st Special Forces Group. Also a sniper team leader with the initial push into Iraq, and long range is definitely one of my passions. I love everything to do with long range, from the execution of it, the ballistics, internal, external, and terminal, as well as just the technical side. I love the gear, right? I mean, it's a lot of fun. I love going through this and understanding how all this stuff works. My wife loves that I love all the gear too. So she loves when I go on a pretty regular shopping spree. So as a matter of fact, going back to on the sniper side, as a sniper team leader with the initial push into Iraq, I actually went to sniper school in Iraq, and it was the first, and that was in 2003, late 2003. So that was actually about this time. It was like I remember we had Thanksgiving there. So it was about this time, 2003. It was the first sniper school that they had held in a combat theater since Vietnam at the time. So it's been a little bit, but things have changed. We've gotten a lot better. But I love everything to do with long range shooting, and hopefully, you know, we'll be able to give you some of that information. And again, I know there's very few things in my mind that are as gratifying as long range shooting, but a lot of people are overwhelmed by it. And I think, unfortunately, the industry is such that they intentionally turn this thing into voodoo, and it doesn't have to be. So hopefully what I want to do is make this simple for you, whether it's on this portion of it, make it simple to understand optics, but also when you come to one of our long range courses, folks, we're going to get you on target, and you're going to be shooting targets and understanding how you shot that target at a very long distance. And again, it's all about taking the voodoo out of it, right? This isn't hocus pocus stuff. It's at the end of the day, it's not that hard. You know, Marines actually do this, and if Marines can do it,
that was for John.
You know, anybody can. I'm sure John's not the only Marine out there. All right, so does anybody have any questions before we get started? Any gripes or complaints about summer? All right, John has something going on here. Let's jump. Let's see what he's got here. All right, different subject. What do you think of the new Mantis trainer? John, I really like it a lot. Just so happens that my camera is like kind of right where these questions show up. I really like it a lot. It's a lot better. The first one was really good, but the newest one is a lot better. It's definitely much more responsive and more accurate and precise on the live fire side of it. The original one, the Mantis X, was really good for dry fire stuff, but as soon as you started live firing, you got all kinds of weird readings. And I don't know what. I'm gonna turn that up for you a little bit, Paul. Let me know if it changes, but I'll turn up the gain a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit louder, and also turn up your volume, Paul. So yeah, so the Mantis X X10 is much better. It has a lot more training programs in there. It has your draw stroke built into several different things. I went over that when it first came out. Got really familiar with it, was using it a bunch. I need to pull that back out. I haven't touched it in a while, and I need to. And maybe next Friday or something like that. Probably not next Friday, but here in the near future, we might go over that in a live stream as well. So I think that'd be really good.
The other thing about the X10 is you can use it on so many different platforms too.
Yeah. So the other one you could too, but it's definitely the other. I'll tell you, the thing that I like most about the X10 is that it just snaps on. Just like almost like a tack light, like a Surefire for a pistol. So it clicks into place. Whereas the old one, you had to bolt it on, unbolt it, take it off, and anything like that. Anytime that you're adding those extra steps is something that you're not going to use nearly as much. You're welcome, John. Johnny Utah, good to see you. Yeah, Johnny. As a matter of fact, we are going to be putting up some red dot classes this upcoming year. We're finalizing. I promise you we will have the 2022 training schedule, or at least most of it, up before next week. So we'll have that up over the weekend, and we'll definitely have, there's still some unknowns. I'm trying to get some different long range ranges booked, and I'm still working through some of those issues. So that's, I'm kind of dealing with some of the logistics of planning those classes. But for the most part, we can throw up, kind of our normal tactical carbine pistol courses, med courses that we're going to be having. Definitely we'll have some red dot courses. We're going to have some mid to long range, low variable power optic, LVPO courses for carbine. And we'll be doing some other things as well. So definitely. All right. Good, Paul. I'm glad to hear that. Everyone bring a Mantis class. Absolutely. Everyone bring a Mantis. All right. So if we got no other questions, let's jump right into this. And again, keep the questions coming throughout. And, again, I'll try to also not make this try to reduce as much as I can for PowerPoint and keep it to more of a visual thing than anybody reading anything. But if you have any questions all throughout this, jump in, throw it up there. And also if you want to, and Paul, of course, you know the number by heart by now, but anyone is welcome to call in anytime. All right, so without further ado, let's throw this up here. And let me get rid of this question. All right, so we got... All right, we're going to talk about the features, options, and construction. We're going to talk about the different reticle types and purposes and understand the importance of proper mounting procedures. Folks, if you haven't seen it, I do have a proper scope mounting video on YouTube, so check that out. As many of you know, there's a lot of stuff going on with these optics, right? You have your fixed or variable power, first or second focal plane. If you don't know what those are, don't worry, you will before the end of this class. Parallax. Most people have no idea what's going on with parallax, and it is super critical that you do. A lot of misses out on the range are because of parallax and not understanding parallax in general, but also not making sure that it's adjusted for. We're going to talk about MOA, BDC, crosshair. We'll talk about all the different reticles and the different ranging systems that are associated with them. Illuminated versus non-illuminated reticles. Talk a little bit about locking turrets and zero stop. All right, so it's good to understand just basic nomenclature and construction. On most, there's a few weird British scopes out there where this is reversed, but on most modern scopes, you're gonna have that elevation turret there on the top, the windage on the right. Parallax there on the left, illumination on the left. Now, the other thing that I see regularly, or it's fairly common, is that illumination parallax knob are switched. Sometimes you'll have that back there. On the back, there at the ocular lens, you'll have your focus. People get parallax and focus mixed up. And then also the magnification, if it is a variable power optic. And then lastly, we have the objective tube there on the end. It is really, really good to understand a little bit about how scopes are constructed so you understand what's going on inside there. And it also helps you understand what makes a good scope from a durability standpoint, right? So you have your erector tube, which is the smaller tube through the middle, and then you have your objective lens and the ocular assembly there on the back. And we'll get more into this, but here you can see the construction. Now, what you see, let me see if hopefully you can see my cursor here. What you see here is your elevation, right? And then your windage. And all of this in there is basically clockwork, right? So clockworks, just like you have with, you know, I don't care if you're talking about a Timex watch or a Rolex, and a lot of money that you end up spending besides the quality glass is making sure that this stuff in here is really accurate, and most of them are not. And that's really important to understand. So, you know, 1 mil, when you dial up 1 mil or 1 minute of angle, unless this is really dialed in and is very precise, not necessarily what you're dialing on the optic is what you're getting in reality. Because now, let's say over, just like for instance, a Rolex watch, right? Or let's just say some other watch. Some watch, you might lose a minute. If it's a cheap watch, you might lose a minute out of, you know, a week. Every week, it ends up losing time by a minute because it's not very precise in there. Whereas a Rolex, some of the other watches out there, the high-end watches, you know, you might not lose a single minute over 50 years. And that's the same with the construction. Now, they've gotten a lot better with this as well. Even some of the mid-range scopes today have gotten a lot better with the construction of this, and they're much more accurate. Now, we can talk a little bit about later on a tall target, how you can see, because what'll happen is as you start dialing in, let's say you're at 20 MOA, you're dialing in 20 MOA, but then you're shooting, when you shoot it, it's actually impacting at 17 or 18 MOA or mils. But getting this right and making sure that clockwork is accurate is one of the best ones out there by far is Night Force. You'll see, I've done a lot of tall target testing and accuracy tests on that, and it's hard to beat Night Force. Let's see what Eric say here. Shoot long range games, the big spinners, buy once, cry once adage really seems to, that is absolutely right, Eric. And this is something I constantly tell my wife. It's really important. All joking aside, folks, it really is. I'll tell you, every time that I've cheaped out or went the bargain route,
When was that?
there was at least once or twice. I regret it. And you end up replacing that, right? So if you start off and you're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to get this, $500 optic or whatever it is. I'm telling you, you're going to hate life the entire time. And then on top of that, you're going to end up replacing that, and you're going to end up spending more money in the long run. All right, let's move on just a little bit here. So when in an elevation adjustment, you guys can see down here in this bottom right-hand corner picture, right? So we have your erector tube, and then you have these turrets that are pushing the scope body, the actual lenses in here, left, right, up, and down.
So the lenses in the middle are actually essentially floating, for lack of a better word, and those turrets are manipulating the position.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And you have that return spring that's always keeping tension on them.
Right.
Now, the other part of this when it comes to really good quality scopes is a lot of them, the better ones are going to have more return springs. So it's not quite as free floating as other ones. This is also why a couple things, if you're tightening down, I'm going to throw up, not going to throw up. I'm going to toss up this. All right, folks, if you see here, we have our scope rings. So if you're over tightening these, right, you're putting too much torque on them. All right, you are binding up the ability for those lenses to move on the inside of that. And that's what's going on with this. So if you're tightening these down too much, you're a lot of times your elevation or windage isn't going to work, or it distorts. Just like I said earlier, if it's real accurate, now you're distorting it because there's pressure and there's torque in places that it shouldn't be. So therefore, your erector tube on the inside there isn't moving the way that it should. So hopefully that makes sense. Benoist C asked, let's see what he's got here.
Says, how do I pick a sunshade for my newly bought Arkin?
Shot 4, Gen 2, 4 to 16. How do you know whether it will fit or not? A lot of times, honestly, you don't, man. You can... Really, the only way to do that for sure is to make sure that whatever... Number one, if you can buy the sunshade directly from the manufacturer, that's the best option, right? So it actually should say. But if you're buying sunshades, whether we're talking about... I don't know if you're talking about the actual... this longer piece right here. I don't know if you're talking about lens caps or the actual sunshade. I don't mean to, this piece right here. This piece right here is a sunshade that goes with this optic. Either way, you want to make sure that the best way is to find a manufacturer or somebody selling them that says that it fits there. And I know that's a terrible...
the actual sunshade.
Yeah. So if you're... Usually the company that makes the way to go about this is definitely get it from the company that made your optic.
Bill has a great question. Glad you're on here, Bill. I know you had some questions about glass for your new purchase. Said, do I need a special torque wrench to know if it's too tight?
Yes, you absolutely do.
Is that in your scope mounting video?
It is. Grab those fix-it sticks.
Okay.
So yeah, number one, you definitely want a good torque wrench or torque set, and it is in the scope mounting video. But on top of that, if you go to fix-it sticks, this, folks, I use this for everything. And on here, what I really like are these torque limiters. This one right here is for 65 inch-pounds. This one's for 45, and these are the ones that I use the most. This one's for 25. Most lens caps, or I'm sorry, your scope caps right here, these pieces right here, most of those are 20 to 25 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. Folks, I can't tell you how many times I've had students show up where they've used 20, the mechanics torque wrenches, and those are foot-pounds, not inch-pounds. So if you put 25 foot-pounds on that, you're crushing the living piss out of that erector tube. So just be aware of that.
And real quick, the Fix It Sticks are an optional add-on to our new holiday bundles too. On the
They
website.
are. The ever the salesman. I love it.
Hey,
Edgar
How else do
Penalba,
I
nice
say?
to see you, Edgar. I haven't seen you on here before, so that's great. SWFA 10 power fix for a PRS competition, really limited budget. Thanks. Yeah, look, are you at a disadvantage? Absolutely you are, without being able to dial up and down. Are there some sort of advantages with a 10 power fix? Folks, again, when I went to sniper school, we had 10 power fixed Leupold. So you can get really, really proficient with those. And it's just a matter of putting in the time and the training. Is it actually help with variable power? Is variable power an advantage in a lot of different situations? Absolutely, especially up the close stuff, right? So, you know, when you're looking through that optic at 10 power and you are zoomed all the way in and you have a target at 50 and you're transitioning from target from 50 out to 200 to 300, you are definitely at a disadvantage with a fixed power scope. Can you work through that? Can you still win competitions? Absolutely. You're just going to have to work harder and put some more time into training. You know, so that's just the reality of that. All right, jumping back in here. All right, so we have the erector tube, and you can kind of see that erector tube as it moves up and down, that entire assembly there. There again, it's just a little bit different view of the same thing, but understanding, and right here is that erector tube, and inside that is all of those different pieces of glass. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the many, many lenses that you have. And first focal plane are going to have a lot more lenses, or several more lenses than a second focal plane. And then also with that is you'll have less lenses if it's a fixed powered scope as well. So just being aware of that. All right, so fixed or variable power. Again, we kind of talked about that already. You can kind of see what's going on there with a 10 power fixed. Imagine, if you will, you guys, to answer your question or kind of illustrate it a little bit better, here at 10 power, you know, if you have those both at further distances and at closer distances, you're going to be at a disadvantage. There's no doubt about it. The other thing, but again, you can kind of train through that. There's, you know, that's, you know, we went through sniper school. We had to hit multiple targets at multiple ranges using a fixed power, and we were able to do it just fine. So, you know, the other thing is a lot of the stuff, there's some argument where some of the new technology is a little bit of a crutch too, right? Definitely makes shooting a lot easier. Image quality. So there's a lot going on with image quality, and the biggest consideration in image quality is that glass. Folks, you're talking about basically jeweler grade crystal glass, that there's not that many sources for it. Most of the decent glass is coming from Japan, which is also some of the best scopes are actually made in Japan. Vortex is made in Japan. There's a bunch of them. A lot of Trijicon stuff is made in Japan.
How about Night Force?
Night Force is made in the U.S., but I do know they get some of their glass from Japan and from a few other places as well. Swarovski, they're not made in Japan, but Swarovski they have their own stuff. They're again very expensive because of the time and quality the time that they put into manufacturing that glass is pretty crazy. But you have clarity, light transmission, sharpness, color, and there again, good glass is going to cost you. Some of the other things that affect image quality, or one of the main things that affect image quality, is the coating, folks. A lot of these lenses come with multiple coatings, and those do lots of different things. And one of the main things they do is they color correct. They make that image look a lot sharper and clearer. They also provide contrast. Some of the coatings on there also protect the lenses from scratching, give it some scratch resistance and things like that. So the more coatings that are built on there, like with a Night Force, you're going to get a fully multi-coated lens on both sides, by the way, both the objective and the ocular lens. It's just going to provide a much sharper and clearer image. And where that really comes into play is especially, number one, at distance. The further you get out, when you compare a high-end scope with a cheaper scope, right around that 700-800 yard mark is where you really start seeing differences in sharpness and clarity and being able to spot the difference. The other thing is when you start getting into lower lights, you start getting to dusk or early mornings and things like that. Those that image quality makes a huge difference. And also target transitions, right? So just going back to even what Edgar was saying, with a cheaper scope, it is harder to find as that image is moving through that optic because you're moving the gun. Those coatings make a huge difference for that. There's no doubt about it. There's lots of different quality glass, and they rate them differently. You'll also see where some of these companies are coming up with their own kind of proprietary name for them, but these are your basic 3 types of glass grades. And there again, you'll see some different names out there, but it's usually just them putting a spin on one of these 3 types of glass. The other part that plays a big part of the image quality too is how that scope is designed. We have the objective lens, the tube body itself, and then the ocular lens. And there is some magic ratios here, right? You can take, when you think of a scope, folks, I want you to think of a scope just like a funnel. That's really one of the best analogies I can come up with. So you can have this huge funnel that holds a lot of water, just like you would see with I've seen lots of scopes that have these big, huge objective lenses, but then they have like 20 millimeter or even 30 millimeter erector tube bodies, the tube body itself, right? So if that tube is really skinny and that objective lens is really big, there again, how does that work? Just like you would see a funnel. You can shove all this light into that area, but it's not being able to pass through very efficiently because the tube body itself is small and it's not letting that light pass through there efficiently. And then the same thing with that ocular lens. So you got to get those ratios right. And I will tell you, it's almost always that if you have a larger tube body, now you see, 30 millimeter used to be the standard. Now you're seeing 34, 35, and even 36 millimeter tubes. And of course, that also means there's more glass in there, which also means the optic's heavier. So those are all considerations. If you're going to take this gun hunting, you might not want the biggest scope out there because you're carrying that gun around all the time. But all of those play a factor. And there again, I see a lot of cheap scopes where they have this big, huge, like 56 millimeter objective lens, but then they have a 30 mil scope body. Their glass is crap. It looks cool and it looks like a high-end scope, and that's what it's designed to do. But it doesn't function that way because it's just not built with the correct ratios, as well as the technology and the correct glass to allow it to function properly or efficiently. So don't be sucked in by a huge objective lens, and a lot of people are. There's a great example of this. I remember I used to have I think it was like a 1:4. No, it was a 10. I think it was like a 4:16. That's what it was, a 4:16 scope, but it had like a 24 millimeter tube. And I remember at 16 power, I had another optic that I could, it was only 1:8, but it had such a, again, we had better glass. We had a larger tube body itself. And at 8 power, I could see it looked like the magnification was much larger and the image was much larger than that 16 power on that other scope. So again, the other big thing with this, if you get a chance, make sure you're going and you're testing some of these things out.
Eric said, how does the Zeiss stock up in your opinion?
Zeiss, as far as the glass goes, they're really, really good. I don't like some of the features. Zeiss is definitely built toward and geared toward the European hunter. And I don't like a lot of the features that are on the Zeiss. Now, I haven't used all of their scopes, but I've had lots of clients show up with different Zeiss scopes, and we ended up spending a lot of time kind of figuring things out and just a little bit of time troubleshooting them because they're built for most of the time they're built for a certain thing. I do think that everybody is starting to come out with things that are more geared toward, tactical. I hate to even say that. let me rephrase that. PRS, Precision Rifle Series, has really blown up in the last few years, right? So long-range shooting has become more popular. And
more as a sport than just people going out hunting.
yeah, so, you know, people are doing a lot more shooting overall. And I think the more shooting that you're doing in different situations like that, it really starts to highlight the weaknesses that wouldn't have shown up. So that being said, people are becoming more educated buyers, right? And they're seeing Zeiss has lived, you know, they created real high quality scopes way back when. I mean, I think even like in the 20s and 30s and things like that. And they've always had that high level, but I think from a technological standpoint and a practical application standpoint, they've been a little bit behind on some of the other optics, the other optic brands. Hopefully that answered your question, Eric. But where I was going with that was the fact that they're getting better. So I haven't seen everything. So I'm talking about the scopes that I've actually used. They probably are starting to come out with a little bit better stuff. And I'm sure if I saw some of their newer stuff, I may not have such a kind of a negative opinion. I won't say I have a super negative opinion, but it's not that positive either.
It's not something you would buy.
I wouldn't buy it. I think there's better scopes for the money. So again, you got to have the right diameter objective lens, the right tube body, the ocular lens. So all of that, along with the quality of glass, is what is going to determine whether or not you have a really good clear image. So you just need to be aware of that. Parallax. Let's talk a little bit about parallax. So this is one of the most not very well understood phenomenons or concepts in the shooting world, and it needs to be because it's very important. But parallax is nothing more than the apparent displacement of an observed object due to a change in the position of the observer. So let me break that down a little bit easier for you, and let's explain parallax a little bit better. What I want you to do right now is just take your finger, stick it out, and the tip of your finger, put it on, I don't know, something to your computer, doesn't really matter, just like you're using that as an aiming device, right? So looking at it, close one eye, and then if you move your head left or right, it looks like that your finger is moving, and now it has a different aiming point based on the fact that your head is moving. So the relation between your head, that second object, and a third object, when you move, the apparent relationship between those two objects move as well. So that is what basic parallax is. And it also is what affects when you're looking through a iron sights, right? So you have a rear sight and a front sight. If you're not getting your eyeball lined up, you have a rear sight, your eye, your rear sight, your front sight, and then the target. If those aren't lined up the same every single time, you're gonna have a point of impact shift, right? So you need to understand that. And we can get rid of that. Number one, you need to understand that parallax, how that works, and then understand that with optics, with modern optics, we can get rid of that parallax phenomenon altogether. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So with parallax, you usually have a knob on the side, and on a knob on the side that adjusts your parallax. And this is kind of this definitely works better in the classroom, this little illustration here. But essentially, I can project my reticle to a certain point. And if I do it correctly, I get rid of almost all parallax. So let's go back to our same example that we just did. What I want you to do is take your finger, I want you to move it around just like you were at whatever you're looking at. Now, what I want you to do is take it near an object close to you, right? So here's my cup. I'm gonna take my finger, I'm gonna put my finger on the cup, and now the relationship, no matter how much I move my head, all right, the relationship between my finger and that target, which is my cup, doesn't change. And that's what parallax does. So if you adjust your parallax correctly through the magic of optics, it's projecting that reticle to be on the same plane as your target. But if you're not adjusting that regularly, you can see what you have here, where if I'm now shooting at a target at 400 yards, but I've only adjusted my parallax to where it's set to 200 yards because I forgot, because I'm shooting at 200, now I'm moving at 400 or 600, all right? If you are not getting your eye onto that scope and that cheek rest, that stock weld, the exact same every single time, your eye is going to be moving around a little bit, right? It's not in the exact same position. And it's not, the relationship to the reticle inside that tube is not the same. So you're going to have potentially some major points of impact. And obviously a less experienced shooter, they're not going to mount that gun the same way every time. So they're going to see a larger impact shift at distance. And I'll tell you, when I'm sitting there and I have two guys on the same gun, and I have one guy that I give him a proper dope and he's shooting a target at 800 yards. They got the same gun. They're using one of our guns out there. Got his dope good. Next guy sitting right next to him, give him the same dope. He was hitting earlier. Now we're at 800 yards and he's missing. When I know the data of previous engagement, the mills or whatever the adjustment I give is good. And I'm like, hey man, check level and check parallax. And then suddenly he's like, oh, all right. So he has his parallax set at 200 yards and now he's shooting at 800 yards. Now, if you're mounting the scope the same way every time, it doesn't matter as much. Now also the other thing I would say is that if you're shooting multiple targets between, let's say 400 and 800, all right, now I can set my optic, I can set that parallax to like 650, 700, somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be pretty good. It's still going to have a little bit movement, but not nearly as much. So in the same manner, we got rid of all parallax by putting our finger on the target. Now all we're going to do is back that finger up just a little bit, right? So now it's not quite touching the target, right? It's just it was touching, and now no matter how I move, now I back it up just a little bit. It's moving a little bit, but not much. I'm still hitting when I squeeze the trigger if I apply all the fundamentals correctly. Hopefully that makes sense, because I'm telling you folks, not having your gun level, not using the bubble on the side of your rifle, or not having a bubble on the side of your rifle shooting long distance, and parallax is what causes more misses than anything else. And I'll tell you, who was it earlier? Edgar, if you're going to be shooting and you're using that single, make sure at a minimum that if you do have a parallax knob in there, you're using that, because that's going to be a huge factor for you. All right, let's go back to this. And again, folks, stop me if you guys have any questions. So reticle types and purpose. We have standard crosshair, minutes of angle. It's not really a reticle type, but we'll talk about minutes of angle, Milliradians, and BDCs, bullet drop compensators. All right, so minutes of angle. Folks, most of you understand, don't even look at this. It just makes it, matter of fact, I'm taking this away. Don't even look at it. Stop looking at it. Stop.
I'm
all
looking.
Right. Summer's very disobedient. I don't know why it won't let me solo view now. It's not even letting me do this. Oh, well. We'll remove that for a second. Folks, all right, so all of you know that there are 360 degrees in a circle. So you have 1 degree. Now, if we take that 1 degree and you divide it by 60, all right, now you have 1 minute of angle. All right, that's as simple as I know how to say it.
So it's 1/60th.
It's 1/60th of a degree. So that's 1 MOA. Now, what you need to know is that that approximate calculation is 1 inch at 100 yards. It's actually 1.047 at 100 yards, but we're doing sniper math. All right, you can get rid of that 0.047, and we can go into that more deeply if you'd like. But you don't need to know that. All right, this is Army math, Marine Corps math, whatever you want to talk about. But I want you to think about a flashlight beam, right? If you have a really, really good flashlight, let's say you got like a, let me get my cursor down there. Let's say you have like a really good flashlight, or even a laser beam. As you shine that flashlight out, that beam gets wider and wider and wider, right? So think about a light that is so bright and so intense, or even a laser, that from the palm of my hand to where I'm lasing it at 100 yards, that produces a circle that is 1 inch. Now, as we go further back, all right, that circle is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because there's some angle involved. So 1 minute of angle at 200 yards is approximately 2 inches. And at 300 yards, it's 3 inches. At 400 yards, it's 5 inches. Now, how many minutes of angle is 1 minute of angle at 500 yards? Think about that question. Summer, how many minutes of angle is 1 minute of angle at 500 yards?
5.
Nope, it's still 1 minute of angle. 1 minute of angle at 500 yards is still 1 minute of angle. Now, it is approximately 5 inches. All right? It's approximately 5 inches. And we need to keep that. What do you think about digital scope levels? Ed asks, what do you think about digital scope levels? It sure is easy to see the red. I haven't used them, Ed. I know which ones you're talking about. I forgot what they're called. I mean, you know, a level is a pretty simple thing. I use a digital angle finder over there all the time. So, you know, you tell me if you're still getting hits and it's working, then probably is just fine. All right. So again, now what that means in a practical sense, because that's where people lose this a little bit, is what does that mean for a practical application for you as far as 1 minute of angle? Well, when we shoot a gun, if it produces approximately a 1 inch group at 100 yards, we call that a minute of angle. And typically between the gun, the ammo, and the shooter, all right, all three of those are a factor in that, right? Between those three, you want a 1 minute of angle gun to shoot. Typically, that's at a minimum to shoot long distance, right? To shoot long range. So now just because you can shoot 1 minute of angle at 100 yards does not mean if it was still 1 minute of angle, you would be shooting it, you know, on paper, it means you would be shooting 10 inches at 1,000, but that is not the case. Once you start getting into, now you're getting into external ballistics, you're talking about dealing with wind. Now we're also getting into a whole lot of other factors. We're actually getting into the rotation of the earth when the round is in flight that long, the Coriolis effect, and that's not a class for this, but just because you can shoot a gun 1 inch at 100 yards does not mean that 1 minute of angle gun is going to shoot 10 inches at 1,000. So I've actually had people call me up or send me emails and ask me questions like that. Like, Gary, you know, it's not shooting 5 inches. I can get a good 1 inch group, but it's not shooting 5 inches at 500. Well, it's not going to, because there's a lot of other factors involved there.
So how long is a bullet in flight if you're shooting at 1,000 yards?
It's like, I think, a second and a half or something like that.
Wow.
We could pull it up on a...
That's enough for the rotation of the earth to affect it, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And just depends on also if you're shooting from east to west or north to south. So if you're shooting from east to west, you know, that target is rushing away from you. Now, if you're shooting from north to south, now you have, depending on which way you're going, now that target is actually, you know, shifting laterally. So those are all considerations. And Coriolis effect starts to come into play. It's not going to cause a miss at 800 yards, but we start to really start considering it at around about 800 yards. So anyways, 1 minute of angle. Does anybody have any questions on minutes of angle? And we'll get a little bit more into practical application of it and what it means, but we kind of beat that to death. All right, good. And, you know, Summer's never been to a long range course.
I'm learning too, guys.
So, you know, it's a good, that's why I asked her down here. Number one, she keeps me company and I enjoy looking at her. But the other part of it is that it also, the questions that she asks are, I know some questions that you guys will have out there as well.
Hopefully they're not stupid.
Yeah. So, you know, you don't have to be that smart to shoot long range, but you can't be stupid either. You got to be able to do a little basic math from time to time. All right. So minutes of angle. And there you go. And this is a perfect illustration. Probably could have used that instead of the, actually, I guess if I actually, there we go. All right, but you guys can see that angle expands as we go out to distance. Yeah, so 1 minute of angle.
And this is because the glass inside the tube is round.
Nope.
No, why is it? Am I getting too deep?
No, it's actually a good question. All right, so when we talk about a gun is going to shoot based on a whole bunch of different factors, but the bullet itself, the ammo, the gun, and the shooter itself are the three major factors. Now, the lowest common denominator in that all affects, you can have 1 minute of angle gun, But if you got 3 minutes of angle ammunition, all right, the best you're ever going to shoot is 3 minutes of angle. Mills or MOA? I go with Mills, Ed. And Edgar, we're gonna talk about Mills in just a second. Edgar was asking whether Mills or MOA, and I definitely prefer Mills. Part of that is because I kind of grew up on that in the military, but I will also say in my mind, if you're new to shooting, I still recommend Mills. And we'll talk about minutes of angle is basically too fine of an adjustment. So going back to minutes of angle, as far as minutes of angle gun, or you got the shooter, the ammunition, and the rifle itself. So there again, you got to have the right ammunition. Now you can have a 1 minute of angle gun, 1 minute of ammunition, and most shooters are probably about a 2 to 3 minute of angle shooter when they first get in on the gun. Right? We can definitely improve that. Apply the fundamentals.
The shooter is the biggest variable there.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's not wrong. You're not wrong with that. All right. So mills, let's talk about what mills are. It's the same thing. You'll see that mills are a lot simpler, which is another reason I like mills. So you have 6,400 mills in a circle. So it's just a finer breakdown of an angle, right? Mills, in my mind, is a little bit easier to understand because at 100 meters, 1 mil is 10 centimeters. There is no 10.047 or anything crazy like that, right? At 1,000 meters, 1 click, it is 1 meter wide, 1 mil. So mills are a little bit, and to me, it's also a better adjustment when you're looking. Later on, we'll look at some reticles where it shows mills versus the MOA reticle, and I like that better. But people get too wrapped up in both of those. Both work. It's just a little bit different languages, right? And again, to me, I like mills better. I know almost all the holds, 6.5 and 308. I know most of the holds at distances by heart in mills. I can throw those out there pretty quickly and know what's going on. And to me, it's just a lot easier. The other thing too is think about it like this. So first of all, there's approximately 3.5, I think it's 3.64, something like that, but there's approximately 3.5 MOA in 1 mil. So if I was giving you an adjustment and you're looking through your scope, if you're looking through your optic there and I give you an adjustment and I say, I can either tell you, hey, move 3 mils, and you can see those delineations on your scope. Or if your gun is in MOA, now I'm telling you to move over 10 MOA. So now you're counting 10 MOA, which is another reason I don't like MOA. The same thing while you're dialing. Now, most scopes are kind of broke down in 1/10 of mil or quarter MOA. But to me, it's just too fine of an adjustment, whereas mils are much easier because we're looking at, we're not shooting minute of angle, we're shooting minute of target, right? So I need to get it onto this target, and I'm not worried about inches and the perfect inches. I know that it impacted here, all right? And I know that I need to get it from here to center mass, which is over here. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm trying to move that bullet from where it's missing to where I want to hit. Eric has a question over here about, let's see what he's got here. I missed the ballistic computer crosswind sensor gun stabilization system on my old M1 tank. It could be a complete math dummy and hit the target in the dark too. Yeah, and I'll tell you, sniper systems are getting the same way, where you're just lasing this target. You're lasing the target and squeezing the trigger, and you're getting the whole ballistic calculation right off there. Now, luckily, you don't get those, even still today, as far as I know, in sniper school, you're not learning on that, right? We're still learning using slide rulers and a whole bunch of other just basic stuff, right? Not getting into, but now what's crazy is you can actually aim and hit at targets that you can't see. I want you to think about this. You can have a forward observer on a hilltop, and he has GPS system on him, and he has a laser rangefinder with a computer attached to it with a ballistic calculator. He can actually laze a target over there, and then he tells you where that target is or beams that information over to you All right, and they actually have optics in the computer system where it gives you a point of aim because it knows where you're at. It gives a ballistic solution to where your target is. So I don't even have to see the target. Just like you're doing with your tank, you're doing indirect fire. We can do the same thing now with some sniper systems. So is it all super effective? No, not really. Not really. You know, with a mortar in that case will be, you know, a 60 mic or something like that. It'll be a little bit better, or an 81, but it can be done. So pretty cool stuff along those when it comes to the ballistic solutions they have. All right.
Hide that comment.
Don't tell me what to do. Don't boss me around in front of people on a live stream. God. All right. So we have all kinds of different reticle types, folks. I would really recommend, well, let's see what else we got here. All right, so I definitely recommend Christmas tree reticles. They have a lot of different ones out there. Yeah, you definitely do need to be able to shoot without all the bells and whistles, John, because, you know, all of that stuff runs on batteries, and when those batteries die or it gets wet and the electronics don't work, you want to still be an effective, be able to put rounds on a target effectively. All right, so Christmas tree reticles of all different types. I don't care if you're running a low variable power optic on your AR, or, you know, you have, you know, a 454 Shy-Tac, you know, extreme long range gun. I'm a big fan of having some sort of hold off ability on there. We talked earlier about the clockwork inside of an optic. It's how important it is for that to be very accurate, right? So, you know, so that way when you're dialing 20 mils, it's exactly 20 mils, or 20 MOA, it's exactly 20 MOA. You're not losing or gaining distance or adding in windage, or when you're trying to dial elevation or vice versa. So it is very, very difficult and very, very expensive to get that exactly right. Whereas almost all the reticles, even on the cheapest scopes, they're CNC laser etched in there, and they are accurate, even the cheapest ones. So if you're learning to hold off, number one, it's a lot faster, but number two, it's also usually much more accurate than dialing. People get they get reliant on dialing. It feels good because I always get to use the crosshair, right? So if I'm always dialing my optic and I'm dialing with every target that comes up, all right, 600 yards, all right, getting up there, I'm putting my dope in there. I get to use the center, right, where I get used to shooting right there at the center at the crosshairs. And we get very comfortable and stuck doing that. But it is so much faster and so much more accurate if we learned to use these hold-offs. Because here's the thing, folks, if I'm shooting and I have good fundamentals, I'm shooting a target like 400 yards, and I'm shooting 6.5, 308, or even 300 Win Mag, doesn't really matter. All right, and I have good fundamentals and good follow-through. I'm aiming at center mass, all right, but I'm still on target, and I see the trace, and I see impact, and it lands over here at this 4. Boom, I see that it misses. Well, I also now know that 4 is now my crosshair. All I do is shift from this being my crosshair, I take this right here, this 4, and I move that to the target, and I squeeze the trigger, and I get a second round hit. Because unlike the movies, I'm telling you right now, it's not always one shot, one kill. All right, but you should be able to effectively follow up and see what's going on. And that takes, number one, a good reticle like this, but number two, having good fundamentals so that you can actually see your impacts or see your own trace, and that allows you to follow up those shots.
That would help you get a second shot much quicker before the target can move.
100%. Whereas, you know,
if you're sitting there having a dial and all this stuff, the target's
people come all the way off the gun. They get off the gun, they reach up here, they look, they're dialing, and they get back down there. And while that works on a range with, you know, a bunch of steel targets, if it's, you know, an animal or a person that you're aiming at, all right, that doesn't work. So just need to be aware of that. So again, huge fan of Christmas tree reticles. Also a big fan of the Horus system in general. I like the Horus systems, but there's also a lot of new systems out there that are very, very, very similar to that as well. Kind of copied what they've done. All right. Too crowded in low light. I haven't found that to be true. Edgar asked if those reticles were too crowded in low light. No. I mean, if you can't see the reticle, first of all, just like anything, you got to get used to that. You know, when I first went to sniper school, I was shooting on a mil dot reticle, just like we see right here, right? This is what I had. And when I moved to a Horus reticle, which was the reticle that you saw here, I was actually using this H59, and this is actually the optic. That's the reticle that I have in most of these scopes, or the trimmer 3s in most of my optics, including our student guns. We also do have a couple of, I'll think of what, G2s, just like this. We have a couple of G2 DMRs in some of our training guns. So this is kind of a gateway drug over to this, right? You get used to seeing this, and you can move over to this. But no, you know, once you train on them, that all of that is just information. And that's what I want. I want that information there. And once you get used to seeing that and understand how to use it, you get comfortable with it. And when you go to something else, not only does this not look busy, like you feel like something like this is very lacking. It's just the reality of it.
Eric said, I hate the idea of dialing and prefer using hold off.
Yeah, you definitely want to get used to using those hold offs. It's good to understand how to dial. That's how you learn the first. That's what we normally do on the first range day, is we dial everything. But by day 2, and definitely long range level 2, I'm having everybody hold everything. You don't get to touch your dials anymore. I give you some basic tips as far as we can dial up, 2 or 3 mils, or dial in some elevation, but just don't even touch them when it. The faster that you can transition to that, the better off you're going to be, and the faster you're going to get hits on target. All right. Reticle types, there again. So, folks, some of you right now, as most people do, all right, you're hung up on the mil versus MOA thing. And I'm telling you right now, in reality, it doesn't matter. I do like mils, and these are mils. So this is 2 mils, right? So we have 2 mils in elevation this way. So this is our 1, 2. So if I said up 2 mils, we would go to this spot right here. But now we also have 1, 2, 3 in windage, both left or right. So we have up to 6 mils total left or right here. But if this being 3 there again, what we would have, if this was MOA, this would be 10. But let's forget about all that for a second. Let's just talk about the practical. Let's say you've never touched mils, you don't know what's going on, but you're looking through a spotting scope. And what's also important is, if you are going to buy and use a spotting scope, is that your spotting scope speaks the same language as your optic. So now I'm looking through a spotting scope.
You mean as far as they both need to be mils, or both need to be MOA?
They both need to be one or the other, right? So they both need to speak the same, but also it's important because a lot of spotting scopes don't have any sort of reticle in there, or they have a very basic reticle. And really what I want, it's what I like about the Horus system, is you can get like an H59 in your optic, and the H59 also in, the spotting scope as well. So let's forget about mils. Let's call these, I don't know, belugas. All right, these are belugas. 2 belugas. If I'm shooting, all right, and you're looking through that optic and you see trace, and you see an impact, or you see an impact over here, right? You're like, Jesus, Gary, hey, you know what? And I was aiming right here. You're like, Jesus, Gary, you need to go up 2 belugas and then right 2 belugas. All right, it doesn't matter what this is. You don't need to know that this is, 10 centimeters at, 100 yards or 100 meters or any of that stuff.
Just go up and over 2.
All we're doing is looking. We're saying, hey, this is where it impacted, so now I'm going to shift my point of aim to this point. This is now my crosshair right here. And that's all you really know. And it really
that
is.
Point on your target.
Absolutely. So if I was aiming here, right? So this is, I wish this was right here, because this is our normal crosshair up here at the top. So if that's where I was aiming it right there at that target, I miss, all right? But I saw the impact here. All I'm doing is I'm taking this crosshair, and it is now my crosshair, and that's what I'm going to use to aim at the target. This is also super nice when you're zeroing, folks, having this ability. So if I'm looking at a clean piece of paper, and this is where I'm aiming at, and boom, I see where my impacts are. They're right here. All right, they're 2 mils low, and they're 2 mils to the right. I know because I'm looking. I put my crosshair where I want the actual target, but I see my bullet hole down here. I know within one bullet, all I need to do is dial left 2 mils, up 2 mils, and now within 2 rounds, I've zeroed my rifle. Now you still want a group, of course, to make sure that you applied the fundamentals. But how about binos for spotting? Let's see. Let's go. I'm behind a few questions. Hate the idea of, here we go. Let's put this one up here first. All right. If you can go back in time, 10 power fixed trimmer 3. Well, I would prefer a variable powered trimmer 3. But no, the trimmer 3 is a great reticle. I got it. My newest scope that I have is a trimmer 3. And I haven't played with that enough because some of the markings on there are more to do with windage and moving targets and things like that. But there again, it's just another reticle that provides more information. If you can get a 10 power fix, if your budget has you to where you're getting a fix, if you can get I don't think you can get trimmer 3s in fix. Maybe you can. But if you can, I would do that. Or at a minimum, G2. I think the G2 reticle you can. So.
Ron said, how about binoculars for spotting?
Binos for spotting. Not the best option, bro. Binos, usually when you're looking at binos, they're not going to have a fine reticle like this. They're usually going to have something like 5 mil. If they have any sort of reticle at all, it's usually like 5 mils. So you just need to be aware of that. Hey, baby, go over there and move that monitor to the right. Just move the whole thing over. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Let's see. John says, can't find a beluga reticle. Well, you're not looking hard enough, John. Let's see. What else we got here? Belugas.
How's that?
Yep. No, that's actually a little bit more over if you can. That's good right there. Yep. No, it's crooked. There you go. Perfect. All right. So there we go. We got enough belugas, right? Bullet drop compensated rifle. Folks, just stay away from BDCs. BDCs are never accurate. Even when you can actually send your gun off, some of these different companies, they make whole systems where they'll provide the ammunition. They actually mill and machine your reticles to match that ammunition. Number one, it's still not going to be perfect to match the ammunition. And then on top of that, you're usually stuck dialing. There are some BDC reticles, or the reticles itself that are BDC. They're never going to be perfect. As soon as you change any sort of, they've determined that reticle indicates hits at a certain environmental situation. You can see right here. Right, so at some range, at some temperature, at some elevation, at some air density, right? They came up with a certain rifle that had used a certain ammunition, and when they aimed right here, it was at 400 yards. The moment that you change that density altitude, you change the temperature, you change the ammunition, and a whole lot of other factors, which all of those are going to change almost every time. This is going to be wildly off. The other thing is you're also married to a specific round. So in my mind, there is no benefit of using a BDC reticle. Some of those are pretty good out to about 300 or 400 yards. And if that's what you're going to shoot, because you can get those really cheap, that might be an option for you. But I would stay, if you're doing long range shooting, this is not a good solution.
So is that reticle type on the market because it is a cheaper option?
No, it's on the market because people think it's an easier option.
Gotcha.
Because this is sold as, hey Gary, you know what? Here, if you use 308, if you're using 308, you zero this at 100 here. All right, that's where you zero it at.
Gotcha.
And then all you got to do is dial 300, and you're going to have impacts here, and so on and so forth. So,
Gotcha.
But it doesn't work out that way, and they're almost always, not almost always, they're always going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed in the performance of that. So there we have another kind of BDC reticle. Does anybody have any questions about BDC reticles? I don't want to spend a lot of time on those.
Just don't buy it.
Don't buy a BDC. Miller MOA. You can choose one or the other. Nothing wrong with either one. But get Miller MOA. All right, so this is pretty important. First focal plane or second focal plane. All right, what this is describing is where your reticle is. So and with first focal plane actually takes like 2 to 3 more lenses to get accurate. But what that says is that when your reticle, let's look right here. So if we look at this first focal plane, we notice that at 4 power, the reticle looks really small. But then as we dial this up to 16 power, that reticle has changed. This is the same reticle. And the reason is that because these markings are staying accurate, right? So if this image out here is real small, then if from right here to right here represents 2 inches, from right here to right here represents 2 inches, that's a really small spot on that reticle. But that means that this reticle is correct. I can use these lines at any distance. When we get over here to second focal plane, the reticle doesn't change size.
The target is just filling up more area inside the reticle.
So we've changed magnification, but nothing has changed with the reticle. Which means if you're going to use hold-offs, or you're going to, as far as, so let's say I know that I'm trying to actually shoot 1 mil to the left or to the right. All right, these second focal plane reticles are only accurate at 1 magnification. Most of them are going to be accurate at their maximum magnification. But if we have it at 16 power, right, and it's only accurate at 16 power, when we dial it down to 8, all right, that means we're actually twice as much. So we're actually shooting 1 mil at 16 power is actually 2 mils at 8 power. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So you can do the math that way, but you have to have it, are you exactly at 8 power? Do you know that exactly? We don't know. So, because there's not enough detail usually, and I'll show you guys on this scope right here. There's usually not enough detail on the optic. You can see right here. I'm gonna try to get up there. But you guys can see as I change this right here, it has my different magnifications. And there's just not enough detail to let me know I'm exactly at 10 or something like that. So again, I'm a big fan of first focal plane optics.
It'd be nice if this like clicked with each.
It would be nice, yeah. But it doesn't matter with this because it's correct at all magnifications.
It's first focal plane.
It's first focal plane. Only the best.
Only the best. Buy once, cry once.
Buy once, cry once. Sorry, babe. I got to buy once, cry once. So yeah, I'm a big fan of first focal plane. Now, the disadvantage of first focal plane, the first disadvantage, the main disadvantage, is that it's expensive, right? It's definitely a lot more expensive, usually a lot more expensive than second focal plane optics, because there's a lot more wizardry going on there. There's actually additional mechanical elements going on there, as well as there's additional pieces of glass, and it's just harder to manufacture and for it to work correctly, right? So
there's more engineering and time.
There's more engineering. There's more.
R&D.
There's a couple different pieces of glass in there. The scope is heavier. All of that stuff. So it usually comes in an upgraded scope with everything else, all those other feature sets as well. So it just ends up being a more expensive scope altogether. All right. Everybody understand? Is there anyone that doesn't understand first or second focal plane? All right, good. If you don't, please stop me, because there are no dumb questions on this, folks, especially if I'm going fast. And there again, this is kind of a weird forum.
So really the only reason someone would buy a second focal plane is because either they don't know or they don't want to spend the money. They don't have the resources.
No,
to
there's
spend
some
the
people that
money.
actually prefer second focal planes, and there are some arguments for second focal planes too. I just don't personally prefer them. Number one, a lot of hunters will use second focal plane because they're much lighter scopes. There's a lot less glass involved in there.
Gotcha.
The other thing, the other
They just
argument.
learned to account for that.
What's that?
And they just learned to do the math and account for that.
No, not necessarily, because what they're counting on, folks, look at this. So they're going back to actually, let's go back to,
Oh, Lord.
all right, so we're back to belugas, right? Let's say this is a second focal plane scope, all right? And I have no idea what power this thing is dialed in at. You know, it's only accurate at, let's say, 21 power. And let's say it's at 14 power right now. But does it really matter? Because at 14 power, I don't know what this is not actually a mill, but if I see the round impact here,
Then just move
I
that
know
to
I
the
just need to
target.
move this over to there, and now I'm gonna get an impact. So you can still use the reticle effectively. There's definitely some other things that you can do with the second focal plane. You can do the math in there. If you know, a lot of people will either be dialed at full or half. I know a lot of shooters that used to rock a second focal plane where they know it is accurate at, let's say, 21 power, but then or 24 power. But they always, if they're dialing down, they only go to 12 power. So there are some ways to get around some of the downsides of second focal plane, but it's just one more thing that you have to think about. So if you have a spotter and I'm looking through and I say, hey, I need you to move 2 mils right, and we see a lot of misses like this, right? So if I tell you to move 2 mils right, if you didn't have that magnification set and now you're using the reticle that's inside the scope, it's wrong. So that 2 mils might be, 4 mils that you actually are shooting or
Because your magnification's not.
because
at
your
the
magnification is not at the proper setting. So now the ruler inside of there is no longer
messed up.
correct. Scope mounting, folks. I would say probably half of the scopes that come to our courses that were mounted by the shooter, the student. And honestly, I see it's almost worse when I see it mounted from a gunsmith. Because gunsmiths work, it's all about hourly, and they usually only charge like $50 or less or something like that to mount a scope. So they don't spend a lot of time and effort in there. I actually see more major issues with scope mounting of gunsmiths than I do even somebody that barely knows what they're doing. So
Whereas when I see you down here mounting a scope for a client, it takes forever. You're down here with like 50,000. It doesn't take forever, but you spend the time, and you got like 50,000 different levels out. You're running around with all these levels, and
I'm very OCD about, and really, honestly, I'm more OCD mounting a client scope than I even my own, right? But yeah, it's important because if that is wrong. Long range shooting, folks, is all about getting rid of all the variables. And that's why you got to mount your scope properly. You got to make sure that before you even mount your scope that your rail is torqued to spec and you're using a good thread locker, which, by the way,
we now have Vibratight.
We now have Vibratight, folks. I'm telling you, if you're using thread locker, use Vibratight. You will see such a huge difference, and you won't see your fasteners come loose. But what also I love about Vibratight is it never hardens, so that if I'm out in the field, I need to back one out and put it back in. The Vibratight still works. So it's not a sales pitch, just a tip, right?
yeah, we
So
only got it because that's all you wanted to use.
Yeah.
So.
and for a long time it was hard to find. So anyways, you got to make sure everything's right. So that way, what we're trying to do is when you get out there and we're shooting at 800 yards and you're missing, the only variable that I want to not have accounted for is you, the shooter. I want to make sure that you're doing it wrong, which is why I really prefer most people when they're coming to our long range courses, leave your guns at home, or definitely don't go out and buy a gun right before a long range course.
As new to long range, you mean?
As new to long range, right. So, you come use our guns, that I test those before we get out on the range. I know that if something is wrong, it is you, and I can work on training you as opposed to not troubleshooting a firearm. We spend so much time. I almost dread it every time somebody's like, "Oh, I just got a gun and I'm going to bring it." I'm like, "Oh God, please don't." You know, and it's fine. But the other issue is that even when we're going through the classroom portion of a course, can't tell you how many times, like, now they're informed on scopes, they're informed on guns, they're informed, and they're like, "Oh man, you know, I bought the wrong gun. Oh man, I bought the wrong scope." Or, "Oh no, I didn't do this step that you're talking about as far as setting this gun up to get rid of those variables or issues." So again, mounting that scope correctly is
Bill
important.
has a question.
Bill says, speaking of magnification, what do you recommend for long range shooting? I like around, like, maxing out at around 30-ish. And honestly, I have that 30 there, but most of the time I'm going to be shooting, folks. So there's a thing, especially with if your scope is not really high end or really good, you're getting above 30. All you're doing is creating more distortion. You're actually creating the optics in there is now creating mirage, and where you think you're aiming is not actually, it's literally an illusion. It's an optical illusion, because it's the optics aren't good enough to create a clear picture, so it's creating distortion and creating what we call mirage. So it's, you know, you think you're aiming at the bottom, but you're actually aiming 3 inches off the target, because it's shifting that light to the point to where, you know, shifting that light to the point to where it's actually moving what you think your crosshairs are on.
So basically max 30, but
yeah, max is 30. If you're buying like a higher end scope, like a Night Force, or just as far as a glass perspective, Swarovski, you're going to get a lot less distortion. So you can get, and this also goes back to how big's that objective tube, how big's your actual your scope tube body. So if you have a 56, if you have a really good scope, it's 56 mil objective lens, and you got like a 34 to 36 mil tube body, you're not going to get as much distortion. So you can go up a little bit higher into the magnification. But honestly, I keep my scopes around 20 to 24, and that's shooting all the way out to, you know, over a mile, right? Because there again, even with the better scopes, the more magnification you're putting in there, number one, you're relying on magnification, and that's really a bad habit. But number two, you start increasing mirage, which is not good overall. Hopefully that answers your question, Bill. Probably beat it to death. There's just a lot to it. Yeah, so anyways, want to make sure that we mount that optic correctly. Got to make sure that horizontal line is actually horizontal and the vertical line is vertical. Folks, I want you to think about this. If this isn't square, if your reticle is not mounted square, as we start to, and we have cant built into that alignment, whether we do it, whether we're creating this effect over here because of the way we mount the scope, but honestly, even worse, because you have that gun canted while you're shooting, you are now turning elevation into windage and windage into elevation. So you just need to realize that. And when we do that, will it matter at 300 or 400 yards? Probably not, but it really starts to matter at 500 yards, 600 yards. There again, when I'm sitting there looking at two shooters and we're on the same yard line, everybody's shooting at 800 yards, you're shooting the same gun as the guy next to you and you're missing, it's almost always because of mirage or because you don't have a scope, you don't have a level on that gun. So make sure that go grab one of those scope levels. Make sure you're mounting one of those scope levels on the gun. And you can see, I'll pull this gun off real quick so you can see what's going on here. All right, so on the side here is a scope level, and there again, when we're shooting, one of the commands that you always hear me say is check level, check parallax, shooter ready. All right, as a spotter, I'm asking you, have you checked parallax? Or you check your level? All right, is shooter ready? And then the next command is, once you say yes, shooter's ready, all right, it's going to be send it. But having that scope level on the side of your gun is going to make all the difference in the world. So, and I don't care. The other thing too, folks, is I would even make sure that you are zeroing your rifle, even your AR. And that's what I like about these, is that we can mount these to a rail. They're not the ones that kind of mount on the gun. So these are much easier. These take no skill to install. So I can actually take this. I actually will take one of these off the rail, and I will actually put it on my M4 or AR when I'm zeroing it, so that I'm making sure that I'm not introducing cant while I'm zeroing it, right? After that, it's not going to matter as much because it's an AR and it's not a super precise weapon, and we're usually shooting it in different circumstances. But for zeroing, I want to be as precise as I possibly can, and that allows me to do that. But definitely when shooting long range, you got to have a good zero. All right. So we can kind of see what's going on here. I'm not going to beat that anymore. Everybody understands that if you're canting the gun, whether you do it, and it just makes it worse, if I've introduced cant when I'm mounting the scope, and now on top of that, I'm adding additional cant, and you will. Folks, I'm telling you, you would swear to God, you're behind that gun, and you're all squared up, and you're like, man, this feels perfect. I feel that I'm straight up and down. But then you look down at the reticle and it's way off. And because the ground that you're on is not even, because or whatever else is going on, maybe in relation to your body, that gun is perfectly level. It feels great. But as far as the earth goes and gravity takes a hold, all right, in relation to gravity, it's not. You're at an angle. So, and that's what matters, because that's what's going to affect the impact of that round. All right, any questions about that? Moving on. All right, so make sure you mount that gun properly. There's lots of different tools out there that you can use. Again, just take the time to mount that properly. Any questions about anything that I covered at all? And again, I don't know why this does this, but it'll let me go there, but there we go. All right, let's see. Fat and bold 9-year-old. I don't even know if you're allowed to be on the interwebs there, buddy. You're fat. All right, off topic, but barrel break-in, yay or nay? No, myth. Complete myth. And this has been proven many, many times.
This guy's from Sweden.
Nice. Hey, thanks for tuning in for Sweden. I don't understand your screen. I'm sure you're not actually 9 years old. All right, especially if you're asking about barrel break-in and you're from 9 years old, man, you Swedes are doing something right. No, I know there's a huge shooting community in Sweden. But anyways, long story short, when it comes to barrel break-in, it is an absolute myth. It is a holdover. It may have been, and I don't even know if it was in. So back when we were machining stuff we weren't as good as machining 20, 30, 40 years ago. As they're machining and they're doing the button rifling and the way that it would leave a lot of grooves and machining and tooling marks on the inside of the barrel. And so those would improve accuracy over time as we start to smooth some of those out. That carried over, and there's some people that are still doing this today. But I can tell you, people that shoot regularly and have done any of their own personal testing or even read some of these, whether it's Todd Hodnett or some of these other guys that do a lot of ballistic testing, all right, there's just no good proof that barrel break-in does anything for you. Does it hurt? No. I'll tell you, I don't believe in barrel break-in at all. Have I still broken some barrels? Yeah, I'll take it. Now, what it will do, what I will tell you for sure that it'll do is if you are cleaning it more often and not, let me stop. For many of you, when I went to sniper school over 20 years ago now, around 20 years ago now, the idea for barrel break-in was that if you got a brand new gun, you would shoot one round and you would clean that thing. You'd clean it, you'd take all the carbon out, you'd break down the copper, you'd take a good 5 minutes cleaning it, and you'd shoot another round. All right, and then you do that same process for at least 5 rounds. Some people said 10 rounds. So we shoot 1 round and clean it in between 1 and 1 and 10 rounds. Every time in between. So you're taking 10 rounds. I mean, you're over an hour deep into just that. Now, after that, you might go to 5 rounds. So I shoot 5 rounds, I clean it. I shoot another 5 rounds, I clean it, up to like And then we get to like 30 rounds. And the other part of this was it was always arbitrary. There was no science behind it. It was just, again, some black magic BS. And I understand where the, it was good intention. But I'll tell you, there's no good proof that it was. And I won't waste my time or bullets breaking in a barrel from now on. It just doesn't do anything. All right. So you will see more fouling as a barrel is new. So you can get that gun out. Will I clean it a little bit more? Like, you know, I will tell you, folks, people over clean their long range rifles. There is nothing wrong. I can get good accuracy out of a gun for 300 or 400 rounds. As our courses, we have like 3 or 4 students shooting on a single gun in a day. They'll shoot that gun all day, 300 or 400 rounds, and then you know, get down and re-zero or test their zero, and it's still shooting under a half MOA. And then we might not even clean it that day. It might be the following day. So it might have 600 to 800 rounds before it gets cleaned, or we start seeing some accuracy degradation, right? That's when I'll start. If I start feeling the gun is chunky or you know, the bolt isn't moving properly. Sometimes I'll just take the bolt out and wipe it down, but a lot of times I will go ahead and wipe that bolt down, but then also run a couple of bore brushes. As a matter of fact, if you haven't seen it, go check out our YouTube video on how to clean a rifle properly.
I think you talk a little bit about that as far as like when you should be cleaning your rifle and
so you know, go check out the video. I'm gonna repeat myself, but go check out the video. But yeah, I mean, as far as cleaning the rifle, you don't need to, people over clean it. But when I am putting my rifles up and they're not gonna be shot for a while, I will, you know, make sure that they're fairly clean. The other thing that you need to worry about more than just fouling, the real problem that will start to degrade accuracy is that copper buildup, right? So that copper fouling, which takes longer than the carbon fouling, but yeah. So, anyways, it's that copper fouling that'll actually start to build up in the lands and grooves, and now you don't have lands and grooves that are deep, so therefore you're not getting the proper spin, and it starts to change pressures inside the barrel. It starts to change. It starts adding variables that you're going to see point of impact shifts with, and that's what you need to concern yourself
Bill
about.
asked a good question. He said, "Do I need to zero again after cleaning?"
No, you don't need to zero again after cleaning. No.
Okay.
No.
Eric said, hope you do a class on maintaining and cleaning high-end optics in field conditions.
Yeah. So let's talk about that just real quick. I'll do a class on it. But the big thing with that is I just told you guys that you have a lot of different coatings on there, right? So what will immediately strip off those coatings is one little bit of petroleum products, right? So if you're using any sort of solvents, the gun solvents, gun cleaners, or anything else, if you have that stuff on your fingers, and then, which if you're shooting, you will, right? And you rub any part of your optic, you are removing some of those coatings. So the big thing is if I'm cleaning my rifle, I usually do one of two things. I'm either going to wash my hands really good and I'll clean my optic first, and then make sure that the lenses are sealed up real good with some sort of scope covers like these. These are the Vortex Defender series, which are really nice. It is a little difficult to get them to the right size because I usually end up having to order a couple of different sets and just kind of finding out which one fits the best because their sizing chart isn't that good. Anyways, but they are very nice. They're expensive. I think they're like $60 for 2 pieces of plastic over here. But they protect those lenses, because if you get any solvent on these lenses, all right, you've, I won't say ruined them, but you've stripped those coatings off of there, and you have damage, and that image will never be as clear as it once was. So be careful with that. And I'll do a whole class on that. Do we have the cleaning kits on the website? We have a couple of those cleaning kits.
I don't think they're on the website because
it's really tough to find a good all-in-one cleaning kit.
We have some over there.
We have some. I don't think I have them on the website, but what I wanted was a kit that was self-contained in a box, in a carrying case. It kind of had everything that you need, and we just got some of those in, but I don't think they're on the website yet. What else? Any other questions, gripes, or complaints about summer? Anything?
I don't know, but think it's getting close to my bedtime. I keep yawning. Sorry, guys.
I know that's right. Well, listen up, folks. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informative. If you guys got any questions, make sure you leave those in the comments. Again, we always post these videos. These videos kind of get posted up on YouTube, so you can even go back and check them out later. And there again, people in the future can come check them out. So if there's somebody that wanted to see this and they weren't here, or you know them or have questions, they can come check this out. But we appreciate everybody's time. We had quite a few. We had 22, 23 people out here, I know, at one time. So we really appreciate it, folks. Again, if you guys have any questions, you're always welcome to email me or even give us a call. And we appreciate you guys coming out and hanging out with us.
Yep.
Any other questions before we go?
Thanks for the one-on-one class.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Essentially.
That was private training.
Private training.
You owe me some money. Folks, have a good night. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Have a Merry Christmas. Final talk to between now and then. We will be getting out the 2022 training schedule, so we'd love... I got to take some good notes. Good. I'm glad you got to take some good notes, Paul. We will have the 2022 training schedule, so start booking those as soon as you see something you like. Folks, we get I don't know why... I'm just going to get this off my chest. It's kind of a gripe, right? This year, out of more than any other year, classes were all of our tactical carbine, all our handgun classes filled up immediately. They were always great. All our advanced classes were a little light this year, which is fine. You know, it's kind of ammo was an issue, another thing. But the other issue that I ran into, I kept talking to clients about was, you know, I would hear them like, Gary, you know, I saw that class, you know, I was thinking about signing up, but I didn't know if it was, you know, is it booked up yet, or are there people going? Like, you know, what are you going to have it?
This is like the chicken and the egg. I mean, like,
yeah.
we got to have people sign up to have the class, but then people wait to sign up because they don't know if we're going to have the class, and then they're like, oh, well, I want to sign up. Well, we had to make the call, and
we 100% understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. But here's what you also need to know from us, folks. We're never going to screw you over. If we don't have the class, we're going to give you your money back. Full refund, right? So the faster you sign up, that helps us out so much from a logistic and planning standpoint.
Especially
Number one,
for the advanced classes, we have to book the instructors well, you know.
Yep.
It's a lot of planning.
Yeah. So, you know, based on how many students we have to book the right amount of instructors for that to make sure we maintain it. So it just helps us out. So if you see a class and you're thinking about taking it, throw your money in there. If for some reason you don't have it, we're always going to give you your money back, or we're going to move that money to another class for you. We have what is it, like a 1 week? What's our cutoff?
It's 1 week.
1 week full refund. As long as you
let us know up to.
But here's the other thing, folks, is we've never enforced that.
Clients, we always square you away. We always take care of you, and we're not here to take your money and run with it.
Nope.
And we're here to keep you coming back. So.
Well, you know, we're going to treat you. We're going to treat you right.
Yeah.
We're going to treat you like we'd want to be treated, right?
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
The other thing with the advanced classes, not long range, advanced classes, I've noticed is hearing from a couple of clients is they kind of felt like they needed to do a lot more training before they could ever show up to an advanced class.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah. So that's a good point. So look, folks, you're always going to feel people, no matter how good of a shooter you are, you never feel like you're good enough. That's just the reality. Because most people, especially guys, we're A-types, and we're always very, very critical. And even though we did a level 1 and did great, and did a level 2 and did great, maybe we don't feel like we got all of that down. We understand that. You don't have to be perfect at a level 2 to go to a level 3. We want you to come through our courses multiple times. That level 3, go into that level 3, and maybe, first of all, you're going to do great. But let's say there are some areas that we identify that you're struggling in. All right, that's going to open the doors to really improve your skill set when you come back to a level 1 or level 2. Mm-hmm. So go into those advanced classes. Number one, if you have attended, if you've met our criteria, if you met those prerequisites, that's all you need, right? And we got you, right? So we're going to take care of you.
Let the pros worry about the rest.
And you will improve by going to those other ones. But there again, we want you to come to these courses. We have clients that come to all of our courses every time that we have them. You know, we have guys that have been to, you know, level 1 15 times. And I promise you, we're going to push you individually, and you're going to get something out of it every single time. And we have an alumni discount because of this. You get 50% off any course that you've already attended. So we want you to make it.
And what I've seen is the people that do end up coming to those level 3s that maybe weren't comfortable, they are able to self-analyze and say, you know what, I want to go back to another level 2 before I come to a level 3 again, and fix some things and do some more things, and
Yeah, and those more advanced courses, they give you some perspective, right? They give you perspective on what you really do need to work on, as opposed to getting hung up on something that maybe it doesn't matter as much from a performance standpoint, but going to those level 3 classes really open that up.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for the...
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed. All right, folks. Again, we appreciate you spending an hour and a half with us. And again, if you got any questions, make sure you hit us up anytime. We'll be doing this again next Friday. I'm going to try to do this every Friday that we possibly can. I will probably be out of the country next Friday, but if I am, we're still going to do it. Scott, it's good to see you, man. Thanks, Scott. That's a great endorsement coming from you. Where's Noah? Noah's upstairs on an electronical device.
He's taking the night off.
We're working on the 12-step program. We've been cutting them off, Noah and Jackson, on the
we're going to go back to 75 hard, and
we've been making them do an hour of PT a day so they can earn an hour of electronics. Captain Codebook, I just started instructing with the Appleseed project. This was good. Good. I'm glad you got something out of it, Captain Codebook. I like your name. It's interesting. It's mysterious. John Steele, what's the next Friday topic? I don't know, John. Throw out some options out there. I'm still thinking about that. I usually do that the day before, but if you guys have some topics that you'd like for me to cover, I can do some research before then. I usually do try to get a few days out, especially if it's a topic that I want to research and discuss, so that I'm at least somewhat informed on it before I just run my mouth about it, like I do on Twitter usually. Twitter's my... Folks, I have a lot of fun on Twitter. Twitter's kind of the place where I'm not as filtered. I just kind of throw. John knows. John Walsh is always on there.
Dan's really been enjoying your Twitter
Dan,
feed too.
Yeah, Dan is called. He's like, "You sure you want to say that on there?" Yeah, it's kind of what. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with it. I'm good. Are you good with it? If you're good with it, I'm good with it. So, anyways, go check us out on Twitter.
John said next topic, building biceps with Summer.
Yeah.
We have a family channel where we're going to put some workout videos, John.
Yeah.
It's called Full Throttle Family. You should check out those videos.
Oh, yeah, me and Summer did
done a couple of videos together.
Yeah, there's a couple of videos on there about earbuds for motorcycle riding.
And motorcycle jackets.
Motorcycle jackets. Yeah, go check that out. It's a little fun. These live streams are easy for me. Doing the videos is work, but doing the videos on the Full Throttle Family doesn't really matter. It's just something fun to do.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to let you go. You guys have a wonderful night. We'll see you next Friday. Until then, stay armed, stay ready, and we'll talk to you soon.